Hey guys, welcome to our actual final Game of the Year discussion. Yeah, we already had 1 or 2 parts of our category awards, but now we're finally back to give our top 5 games of 2017. So, let's just get right into it. Derek, what's your 5th favorite game of 2017?
I gotta give it to Resident Evil 7. Like, just jump right into it off the bat. Resident Evil 7, like, it's one of those games, like, after I finished playing it and just enjoyed it so much, it's stuck in my mind for a while. Like, I go a little bit farther and it'd be like, yeah, I still like Resident Evil 7. A couple months go by, yeah, I still really like Resident Evil 7. Like, it's one of those things that never really left me. I finished it and it was just like, that was a good time. I really enjoyed it. Of course, it falls into a few Resident Evil tropes, but that's good. I think I like that it still had those connections and everything else to it. So I'm actually really glad we went to top 5 instead of top 3, just so I could put it in to have Resident Evil 7 in here and give it that recognition. Because yeah, I really did enjoy it that much, and I know there's a bunch of DLC for it, but I didn't hear great things about it, so I'm not quite sure if I'll pick up the DLC, especially because it's only an hour long or so, not sure about that. But the main game is so good, and they're coming out with a gold edition, so if you haven't picked it up then, you can get that and get the DLC if you want. But just even on its own, I so enjoyed that game, and I'm looking forward to what Capcom does next, and hopefully they can capitalize on what 7 did right.
So while you were afraid of not being able to include it on your list, I was too afraid to play all the way through Resident Evil 7.
Now that is true fear.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was playing in VR, too scary for me, so.
I do want to play it in VR.
I just gotta say, capitalize. I gotta play the Andre role here.
Like Capcom? Is that?
Yeah, Capcom,
okay.
capitalize.
You know what's funny? As he said that, I felt something, but I wasn't quite sure how to tie it in. But you finished it off for me. So
I'm happy to do that.
All right, that's what you're number 5.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking that too.
I know, right? So, okay, agreed. There were so many great games this year. I'm so happy we're doing a top 5 and not just a top 3, because it allowed me to include SteamWorld Dig 2 at my number 5 spot. And, this is also my favorite indie game of the year. Fantastic game. The gameplay loop got me from the get-go. I did a Game & Watch, for SteamWorld Dig 2. It lasted 30 minutes, and that was enough for me to know I've got to see this game through 100%. And I didn't expect it. I'm not a SteamWorld fan. I wasn't looking forward to the game, but it came out of nowhere, and the gameplay loop is so addicting. It's got a great chill-out soundtrack, beautiful graphics, and really great painterly style to the backgrounds, and it's just a really fun game to relax and chill out to. And when I was playing it, I couldn't think of anything else other than, oh man, if I dig down just a little deeper, what am I going to find? Or, where do I find this thing? Or what's around that corner? So, SteamWorld Dig 2, my number 5 game of the year.
So you're saying you dug it?
You just stole my pun from the last part.
I know.
You're darn right, dude.
Yeah, that's pun part 2.
Exactly. Anyone listening to these back to back, God help them, by the way. Yeah.
God, guys, I'm getting really steamed listening to all this.
Just go off in your own world. Get out of here.
Nice.
Oh, God.
All right, so my number 5 is kind of a cheat, because technically, if we go by our review scales, or our review scores, I should say, my number 5 should probably be Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But that was in my top 3 back when it came out on Wii U, so I didn't want to include it this time. So instead, my top 5, or my 5th game, is going to Star Fox 2. This game is, supposed to come out 20 years ago. It's finally out, which itself is amazing. Whoever saw that coming, as we already touched on before. And the game's fun. It is still a fun game. I really enjoyed it. Like, I actually enjoyed it probably right around as much as I did Star Fox Zero. Granted, it runs like crap. The frame rate is like literally 15 frames per second most of the time. But despite that, it does some really unique things that we haven't seen quite since. Like with the whole real-time map system in a way, where it adds like a strategy level or strategy element to the game. The walker form used in a way that a little bit different than how Star Fox Zero used it. I thought it was a really fun game. I didn't see it coming, so yeah, I wanted to put that on my top 5 list.
But Andre, the graphics are so bad.
I know. They're charmingly retro, Derek.
No, I agree. I haven't got the chance to really sit down and play it yet, but I like the idea that it's available to play in its full version.
Exactly. The fact it's out is amazing, so I really like that. All right, Derek, you're number 4.
Number 4, I'm going to catch some flack for this one. I know it for a fact. Probably even from you guys. Super Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, that's bullcrap.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I agonized over this placement. I'm like, I'm not sure, but that's the thing. That's the level of quality we're seeing in 2017 that I'm putting Odyssey at number 4 because, no kidding, it is a fantastic game. It is so much fun to play, and I had a ball playing through it. But I was also, once I finished it, I was okay with moving on. Like, I was satisfied, and I didn't need to, like, I stepped away from it a little bit, and I'm even thinking about it now. I was like, meh, I'm good. I don't need to come do the 2 extra worlds and all that. I did so much during the main campaign, and the main campaign is fantastic. Constant rewards and with the moons and everything. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, so I don't want to get going too in depth right now. But something about it was like I enjoyed it. I loved the ending so much. But even as I was playing it, I could tell I was not connecting with it as much as you two. And I don't know why that was, but because it is fantastic. All the props in the world. But not quite as good as I didn't quite get it to the level as the other games I played this year. That'll be higher up on the list. So hopefully I can argue my point, but I have nothing bad to say about it.
No,
It
I mean,
just
you don't have to
didn't
defend it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of it might be too. I mean, I have no idea, but I've always been a Mario fan growing up, whereas I think you weren't so much.
Well, I started out with I think it's 3D Mario is where I fell off the wagon because I didn't have an N64 growing up, so I didn't get back into Mario until a little bit later, and I think I came back with Sunshine because I had a GameCube. So there you go. I played a little bit of 64, but not a ton until I finally played it again on the Wii with the fully played it on the Wii thanks to the Virtual Console. But I think for me, Galaxy is still my favorite Mario. Now that doesn't have anything to do with best games of the year, but I still put Galaxy above Odyssey, and I think the structure of those actually delineates that, where I like this open world functionality, but I don't know, I felt like no singular challenge really grabbed me in the same way that Galaxy did, and I think that might be why I did not place it as high. But I still, I love this game to death, and especially the ending in the last bit. It's so good. But number 4.
Well, I am so thankful, A, for you, Derek, and B, that you went before me.
Oh my god, I cannot deal with you guys.
Because this is great. Now I don't have to be the first game explainer to slot in Super Mario Odyssey at number 4. I did too, actually. And this comes from someone who is a huge Mario fan and who grew up with Mario and has played all the 3D Mario games to completion. Honestly, Derek, I mean, you hit so much of what I was going to say on the head. I love this game, but it is absolutely emblematic of the incredible competition this year. It's so good, and I love the initial journey through it. I love the campaign, and keep in mind, I got all 999 stars. Jeez. But that may be part of the problem, and I have to say, I love the game, but then the post-game, upon further reflection, I didn't really like some things about how the post-game was structured. I didn't like that the game doesn't do a great job messaging to you about why you need to even buy moons after, in the post-game, and how you basically, if you want to get 100%, you're buying the last 100 moons. And you said something specifically, Derek, that really touched on it for me, that the open world structure, as much as I liked it, there is no individual challenge that really resonated or stuck with me, and I think I'm someone who looks for a little challenge from the 3D Mario post games. And I'm totally cool with it being a walk in the park through the main, the campaign, and I love the campaign. But even when you get to the post game stuff, like the darker side, it didn't really culminate in anything that I was expecting. And you kind of touched on this in your review of the game, Andre, where after about 500 moons, that path to 100%, you really start getting diminishing returns. And that isn't a feeling I'm used to with Mario games. So I want to make it clear, I love this game. It's so good. It's fantastic. But upon further reflection, I think as complete experiences, I actually prefer the Galaxy series. I would still rank those higher than Odyssey. And Odyssey is a strong number 4. I love it, but it didn't stick with me and really stay and resonate with me in the same way that my top 3 did. So I'm just as surprised as you guys are, but that is my number 4.
No, you're not. You may be as surprised. You're not as disappointed as I am, at least.
I'm not. I knew you'd be. So I'm so glad Derek agrees, because I figured, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have more to say about this later.
Yeah.
One point though I want to touch on is I mean, I agree with you about the post game. I brought that up in my review. I thought that I wouldn't cut off at 500 moons. I enjoyed it for quite a bit longer than that. But there was a point where, yeah, it started running out of steam a bit. But I don't think a game needs to be amazing 100% of the way all the way through. I don't think you need to be all the way through.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily... Well, for me, I wouldn't hold it against it. Like, holding it against it for that reason would be like holding it against Breath of the Wild for getting all 900 Korok seeds being a complete chore. So, that's the way I look at it.
That is a very good point. But I also don't hold that to the game. Because I barely did any post-game. Like, I did the kingdom you get after you finish the game, and that's it. And then I played a little bit of the others, and I'm being like, no, I'm good. And I felt satisfied with my playtime. There's nothing against it from that. But it's just, for whatever reason, again, there are moments in Odyssey that are some of the best in this series.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, that goes into how personal this is. I mean, just because Mario Odyssey is my number 4, that doesn't mean that I think it's objectively better than the other 3 games I have yet to talk about. It just means that personally, as much as I loved it, it didn't stick with me the way that the top 3 games for me did. But, it's also, what do I look for in a Mario game versus what you guys look for? Like, I loved it, but I could probably count, like, out of all 999 moons, I was hoping the game would push back a little more after the ending, and I can probably think of, like, maybe 10 or 15 moons in the entire game that are memorable to me because they actually required some sort, like, I had to try to get them more than once. Like, I just feel like so many of the moons come so easily, and they basically just hand a lot of them to you, and that's nothing wrong with that, but that's just personally the structure. I wasn't looking for that kind of structure as much, I think, and I think my time reflecting on Odyssey has helped me come to see that, but I still adore the game, and again, I 100%ed it, spent 90 hours on it. I'm not saying I hate it, I love it.
So you're hating it, you're saying?
Yes, I hate it. Worst game of 2017.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll return to Mario later, probably. Spoilers. Now, there is one thing I need to clear up here, because I am a complete idiot, and I totally screwed up an element of my top 5, and the Star Fox 2 apparently wasn't actually number 5. It was number 6.
Nice.
So I'm gonna speed through number 5. So yeah, Star Fox 2 shouldn't have made it onto this at all, so I'm sorry about that. ARMS would be my real number 5, but I don't want to talk too much about it. I enjoyed ARMS for what it was. I kind of fell off the wagon though. Like, once I got over like the novelty of it, I kind of I was over it. So I got like dozens of hours of fun out of it, but I haven't gone back. But I thought it was really cool. It was a unique idea. But yeah, I'm not really playing it much these days. So ARMS is technically my number 5, but I'm glad I get Star Fox 2 a shout out anyway. So we're on number 4 now, right? So
yes.
Yeah. So my number 4 is Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle. We kind of touched on our category awards. It's a game that came out of nowhere. It's kind of amazing. It turned out as well as it did, and I really had a blast with it. I'm not a big Rabbids guy, although I did enjoy some of the entries. And I'm definitely not a big strategy guy, and the fact that this game hooked me as much as it did is really impressed me. Like, the game is fun. It's fun. It's funny. It has a strategy system that's deep, but not too deep. It's easy to get into, but still has depth to it. And yeah, it's just a joy to go through. Like, everything from the presentation to the humor, to the graphics, to the music, it all comes together in a package. It transcends any individual element, and that's really cool. So I really enjoyed that game.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. It's amazing how well all these weird elements just come together to make a fantastic game. Mm-hmm. Like you would not expect any, looking at any individual part, Mario and Rabbids. Okay, wait, you're giving him a gun? Wait, it's a strategy game for Mario? You look at each part and it's like, this sounds like the stupidest idea ever. But it works.
Especially with how some of those parts seem to, come at the expense of other parts. Yeah, like Mario and the gun or Mario and Rabbids. Nothing mixes here, and yet it does.
Well, and the amount of polish on display. I only got to play it at E3, basically. Just one of the games that fell through the cracks for me this year, time-wise. But even just playing at E3, you could tell just the amount of love that team had for what they were making. And there's so much polish packed into every little inch of that game, at least from what I played of it.
Yeah.
And from what other people have told me, the entire game is like that. So even though I didn't get to personally play it, I have to just shout it out because it is so obvious just how much love they had for what they were making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious how their story DLC is going to go, how much they're going to add to that if that's coming out next year.
That will be interesting. All right, if my math is correct, which it may not be because clearly I'm an idiot, we are on our top 3s now, right?
Yes.
All right, so
Yes.
this is where it's getting real, even though Mario somehow didn't make it into either of yours.
Aren't you glad we did top 5?
That's how real it is. That's what I was thinking. Like, if we don't do top 5, before I could tell you that, Andre, I'm like, God, if I don't do top 5.
I'm almost more offended now that it got a number. Like, I would prefer to not make it at all, actually.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
No, I'm joking. All right, Derek, number 3.
Well, if you get a number 6, I'm going to put in a number 6 real quick. Metroid Samus Returns. Anyway, number 3. I have to give it to... It's a funny thing. I'm glad you had the one word in there, Andre, when you were talking about, like, even if, like, you don't have to finish this bit or anything like that. But that's how much of an effect this game has left on me. Persona 5. I have not finished it. It could completely drop the ball. Everything I hear doesn't seem to. But all 65 hours I played, and I'm pretty sure 65 hours is enough to know how much you like a game. Everything about this game is clicking. As I was playing it through, and as I'm still playing it through, there's a new Game Plus feature to this game. I'm readily thinking about, let's just jump into New Game Plus so I can see all the different interactions between the characters, because I might not get them all in this one. So I'll have all the improved character bits where you can actually, like, how smart you are, and you need this certain level of smartness in order to talk to this character or get to this point, and actually see all that. So I'm actually contemplating doing a New Game Plus so I can see even more about this, and I'm not even finished with the first playthrough yet. That's how much it really connected with me, and I love the characters, I love the concept. The concept feels so modern. With how the idea of the story is basically, adults are crap. They're corrupting this world. Let's jump into their hearts and change their minds so they actually do the right thing and feel some guilt for what they're doing. That kind of resonates these days.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, are they wrong?
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, a lot of people are like, I've seen people like, we need a Phantom Thieves to steal a few hearts in the real world here. That kind of thing. But yeah, just some great characters that stand out. The more you learn about them, it all works. Plus, with just the classic Persona gameplay and a lot of improvements to Persona 4, it's a lot easier to keep track of things. There's actually purpose beyond just learning more about a character and being able to fuse better personas to connecting with a lot of different people, as you'll get passive bonuses for various things. It is very smartly laid out, and it feels like a true sequel and expansion upon the ideas that has come before, and it is a wonderful game. And I was going back and forth because I've never put a game on my Game of the Year list where I didn't actually beat it, but I felt like I've encountered it just enough that I feel definitely not top, but very much deserving of my top 3.
All right. Well, I've certainly heard a lot of good things about P5. Yeah, it's another game that I didn't get a chance to play this year, but it was one that was on my list. I've heard, just watching videos of it, the sense of style just in the menus and just, even like the victory screen after every battle, like the way that happens. Persona games have such an incredible sense of style.
Oh yeah, sense of style and coolness, and you just get into it. Like, I'm bobbing my head along to the music and everything else. It's great.
Yeah, no, and I've been I would do some reading about P5, and no, even though I didn't play it, like their Persona games have always been known for having great characters, and I've been reading a lot about people's reactions to this villain named Kamoshida. And I, of course, have not played the game myself.
Oh, yeah, first villain.
But I think you've already gotten past him. But people are talking about...
Yeah, he's the first heart you change.
Yeah. and people often talk about how he's just the bigot, like one of the best villains, because he's just so thoroughly detestable and hateable. And based on what I've learned about him, I want to play P5 at least up to that point just to beat him, because he's such a good... He seems, out of context, like an incredible villain.
Oh my god, the things that he does!
Yeah,
oh my
I've heard.
god.
Yeah. Well, I guess since you guys very quickly name-dropped your number 6, I have to as well. And my number 6 would have been Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment. But moving on to my actual number 3. This is tough. My top 3 was so hard this year. I'm going to get into that a little bit more when I come to my number 2. But my number 3 game this year...
Also, Super Mario Odyssey. You were forgetting.
Yeah, also, Mario Odyssey 4 and 3. Nope, so... Unlike Derek, who's including games that he has not finished, otherwise maybe Nier Automata might have made its way on here somehow.
Hey,
but
did you put 60 hours into Nier Automata?
I didn't. I put 15, so that's fair. So, no, my number 3 is going to be Sonic Mania. What a game. I've said so much about it, I don't know what more I could possibly say. For me, it is the complete package as a kid who grew up both as a Sonic fan and a Mario fan. I haven't been wanting for great Mario games for the past 20 years, or at least really, really, really top-class Mario games for the past 20 years. But Sonic you have, of course. There have been some good games here and there over the years, but not like Sonic Mania, not a complete return to form for classic Sonic. And the crazy thing is this game wasn't even made by Sonic Team. It was made by a team of really, really talented fans, and for me, it was the whole package. It was a Sonic game I've been waiting for. Obviously, I love platformers to begin with, but even going back to games like Sonic 2 and 3, there is a moment-to-moment just finesse and sense of momentum with the level designs in Sonic Mania that I feel like the level designs in Mania might even be better than some of the original games, just because of the way they propel you through them, and they hit that perfect balance between momentum and letting the game, that payoff for the speed, the burst of speed that you get with, player input. Like, there are some tricky platforming sections, and sometimes Sonic games are accused of playing themselves. That isn't the case with Mania. Like, yeah, you got those really cool, speed burst sections, but you have to pay attention. You don't just hold right to win. And I feel like Sonic Mania's level designs hit that really nice balance of like speed and platforming. And I mean, the soundtrack by T. Lopes is phenomenal across the board. The graphics are it's what you think a Sonic 2 or 2D Sonic game looked like, but with all the extra effects and post-processing stuff that you could do on a Saturn. Like, it nails the idea of a Saturn 2D Sonic game that so many fans, including myself, have wanted for more than 20 years, and I think it delivered on literally every front. I have so much love for this game, and again, this doesn't mean that I can see the comments now, oh, Ash thinks Sonic Mania is a better game than Super Mario Odyssey. That's not what this means. It just means that Sonic Mania...
No, that's objective. That is objectively what you're saying.
Yes,
Ash.
objectively, obviously.
Okay.
No, but what it means is that it resonated with me more personally, and that's why it's my number 3.
So there are 3 things here I want to comment on real quick.
I love it.
None of them are Mario Odyssey related. So one is, I agree, I think the level designs are probably the best 2D ones in Sonic, and I offer myself as proof of that, considering I actually beat this game unlike all the other 2D Sonic games. 2, with that said, as you also touched on, a lot of people have accused Sonic games or Sonic levels of playing themselves. I wish one of them had in this case, being a terrible airplane level.
Oh yeah.
Sure, that's true. It's not at all a perfect game, and you're right. I even said that. Derek and I both said that in our co-review of Sonic Mania. Neither of us thought Sky Chase Zone needed to come back, and Mirage Saloon Act 1 as Sonic and Tails is like the low point of that game. But even the low point is like it's not a bad level. It's just the worst.
Oh yeah, I have complaints about my number 1 as well. But
Sure.
3 is, I'm actually shocked this isn't even higher up on your list. Considering we had conversations about how you might have considered giving this game a mind-blowing rating, which suggests to me that you might have had a potential had you gone through with that. 3 mind-blowings this year if you treat these as your 3 best games.
No, I mean, you're right, and that's one way to look at it. I think what I would offer there is that I have had to do so much soul searching this year for my top 3, and I'm going to get into more of my number 2. But like last year, you guys, I feel like this year probably had. It sounds to me like you had games that you knew were your game of the year, and I have had those too. Like last year, Bravely Second, not even. I knew it. I knew it as soon as I played it. Rocket League the year before that, I knew it. This year, I didn't know it. And this year, I had to really do a lot of soul-searching and fighting internally back and forth among my top 5, and especially my top 3. And even more especially my top 2. It's been a real battle, so...
My God.
So, yeah.
Sounds
it's
like
been tough.
You're having like a force battle inside of you.
I know. See, I'm saying I take it seriously. No, I knew what it looked like to rank Sonic Mania over Mario, which is... Thank you, Derek. Thank you again for not being the first person to say that Mario Odyssey is your number 4. That totally softened my landing.
Can you stop rubbing that in? Jesus. God.
I mean, I agree with you about Sonic Mania. I enjoyed it a lot. I loved it, but it didn't. There was never a threat of it hitting my top 5. I enjoyed the music. I enjoyed the gameplay.
Did you say a threat?
Threat. I love that. A threat of it. Like as if the threat has breached my defenses or something.
We can't let Sonic in the top 5. No, even though I'm pretty sure I've thought Generations and Colors were some of my favorite games of their years. But no, but it just... I liked what it did, but I think where Sonic Mania truly shined is every time they were able to go completely original. And I love the celebration they had for all the classic stuff, but Sonic's been doing that a lot lately. They need to move beyond that. And to see those flashes of them moving beyond that, I like Sonic Mania. If they're allowed to they're allowed free reign to do whatever they want and have their own original ideas completely through the entire game, I will adore the next one. But this is a stepping stone to me, and while I love it, it's not quite. I need more originality within it in order to truly appreciate it. That said, you can totally feel the love for this from those developing this game throughout the entire experience. Like from the moment you start it up and get that wonderful animated opening for it, and seeing Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles running around. It is gorgeous. It put a smile on my face right away, and the way they capture these characters is great. But I need more than just 4 new levels, 4 new zones, and 8 returning ones that have been remixed.
That's fair. The only counterpoint I would offer to that is that the Act 2s and the returning levels may as well be completely new levels, because they have...
That is true. You might as well... You could almost consider them Act 3s for their original counterparts.
Yeah, that would be fair, yeah.
But
no, I totally hear you, and that's a completely fair... summation of Sonic Mania, and some of its shortcomings too. I agree that I really want to see a game full of original levels and ideas from this team, and that was one of the things that was a drawback of Sonic Mania for me, was that it wasn't all original. But at the same time, I am thinking about playing it even now, and I just played it a few days ago, and it's just, I keep wanting to run through this game, put my headphones on, lose myself in the soundtrack. It's just such a fun game to run through, and I keep playing it, and I keep going back to it.
All right. Well, if you thought Mario at number 4 was divisive, I think my number 3 might be even more divisive, especially because it kind of, when you mentioned Sonic Mania being a stepping stone, Derek, I feel like it's a perfect way to describe my number 3 being Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now I do want to say this was pretty close to getting my number 2 actually, but so I waited. I did have a bit of a crisis here with, like Ash has had with all of this.
A bit of a crisis,
yeah.
A lot of a crisis.
But no, I mean, I really did enjoy Zelda Breath of the Wild. I also can't play that game without seeing so much missed potential, and that's why I think it sets an amazing foundation, just like Sonic Mania did, for what comes next. And Zelda took some major risks, and I absolutely appreciate that. And I don't think it, and I think it nailed a lot of them, and in other respects, I think it kind of missed the mark. Which is why I'm really excited for what comes next. But I don't want that to undermine what it does do well. And what it does do well is pretty amazing. Like being able to explore this massive world really however you want, whenever you want. There really is no order to this world, for better or worse. And that is something that we really haven't seen much of, especially on this scale. So that is really cool. And then you add all the other elements like the physics engine, which allows for multiple ways of going, both exploring as well as tackling the puzzles in the game, which is really cool. How like even every shrine in a way is kind of like an open-ended adventure, because there's so many ways to solve these puzzles, as we just touched on recently in our DLC discussion.
And all the responses we got from people showing how they solved the one puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we ourselves had multiple methods, and people added their own methods on top of that. It's pretty mind-boggling how many ways you can do any single thing in Zelda Breath of the Wild. So yeah, I mean, it's number 3. I think it's a really good game, but at the same time, I can't wait to see what they do next with the concept that they built here. And yeah, so I'm really excited for the next Zelda.
I'll just pick up right from there, because Breath of the Wild is my number 2. So I could just catch that ball and keep it running.
Yep, there you go. Exactly.
But no, I agree. Like, the next Zelda after this is going to be great, but I still think this is a really strong game for what it does. I think the biggest factor that hurts it is replayability. Like, you'll want to go back in and explore and do more, but the problem is you can't recapture that same feeling.
You can't. Yeah, the magic is kind of gone.
I mean, it's cool to run it when you had new things to do within that world, thanks to the DLC. It's great, but once you do all that, it's kind of gone. That said, as you mentioned, the sense of exploration is fantastic. I wanted to go in direction and go that way and see everything it had to offer. And I think I was going back and forth between whether I wanted Breath of the Wild at 2 or at 4, and swapping it with Mario Odyssey. I was going back and forth, but I think what really did win out for me is just I felt a better sense of exploration from Breath of the Wild, and I felt more rewarded from that exploration from Breath of the Wild, which I know is you do not agree with at all, Andre. I'm almost positive of that fact. Taking away the Korok seeds. Korok seeds suck as rewards.
They're horrible.
They're awful as rewards. But everything else, like a new material, a new animal to find, a new shrine, every other kind of reward is great except for those Korok seeds, especially because they become meaningless after you get, 300 of them and actually upgrade everything?
Well, they became meaningless far before that for me, even, because you don't need a full inventory.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, the only inventory I maxed out was my weapons, because I like having a lot of weapons. But beyond beyond that, I was like, no big deal. I stopped worrying about it. It was still fun to identify where those Koroks could be hiding, but I didn't feel the need to continue doing that. However, I did feel that pull of finding every shrine, completing every shrine, because I loved every new puzzle they introduced and all the new things they did. They did some fantastic things. But the thing is, Zelda has some weaknesses. The story isn't that strong. The Divine Beast can be a little repetitious, but the thing is, those are so minor complaints in the grand scheme of this game, where for once, we always go back and forth like, oh, dungeons are the best parts of Zelda games. And you're like, no, the exploration. And this is the game where I completely agree with you, Andre. Who cares about the shrines and all that? Like, they're great small puzzles. Same with Divine Beasts. Dungeons don't really matter. But that actually exploring Hyrule, seeing everything it has to offer, seeing that there's how much is beyond the dueling mountains. Because when I first saw those, I thought, oh, that's the edge of the world. Nope, it goes on for quite a while. And that is a really great sense. And whoever thought being able to climb everything is a freaking genius. That opens up travel possibilities so much that I felt no need to use a horse. You would think you would in a world this big, but no, I wanted to travel by foot to see every little thing, or at least glide everywhere to see it. And it was always fulfilling, and I was so ready to come back to it and do it every time. Again, there are small problems, just like Odyssey has, but I just slightly edged it out for me and just made it that much better of an experience.
Fair enough. Man, I'm still going back and forth and having a crisis of conscience here because, we're at my number 2, and I said I'd kind of go into a little bit more. I've gone back and forth on these two games for months now. It's crazy.
Now we know what they are.
Yeah, I know exactly what they are.
I still am, literally. I mean, I'm going to be straight up. Like, other years, there have been previous years where I, like you guys, have had that. This is my game of the year. Again, Bravely Second. It was not even a choice. There have been other ones. It was so obvious to me. This one, for all intents and purposes, I love these games equally. But if I have to choose, there has to be a winner and a loser. And I'm just as surprised by this as you are, given my feelings on both these games. I think my number 2 actually has to go to Horizon Zero Dawn. And I am as surprised as you are. I love it. I love Horizon. It has such an incredible story. It has the best graphics of any game I played this year. Some of the best graphics I've ever seen in my life. I loved exploring the world. I love the music. Aloy is such a great new character. I mean, it was a complete experience. But, at the end of the day, it was a best-in-class, top-class experience in a lot of ways that other games have done before. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when I think back on all of 2017, Horizon has a lot of my mind share and a lot of my heart share. I think about all the 80, 90 hours I spent in it. But it isn't the game that I think about the most, that I have all the crazy stories about. So you'll see what that is, and, well, you probably already know, but we'll see what that is a little bit. So Horizon Zero Dawn's my number 2, but I love this game so much, and I have not, and here's another point of how I feel like it's kind of unfair. I didn't get a chance to play the Frozen Wilds DLC before I finished, or before the end of the year. So if I had gotten to go back and play that, I might be having a different discussion right now. But I got to go with what I know right now, and what I know right now is that Horizon Zero Dawn is the second most memorable, crazy game I played this year.
You say that was surprising. I actually would have been surprised if it were the inverse of what's going to happen here. Or
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
I can see it go either way because I know how much story is important to Ash, and I know,
That's true.
And that's why.
Horizon.
That's why I'm surprised by myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
That's a big deal because that's the thing. I've heard from a lot of people that the story in Horizon is great and it's interesting and involving, and I can't wait to play it. I really do want to pick it up soon and play it myself, but I've had no experience with it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I feel like I've even betrayed myself right now. I'm like, oh my god, because I love them both so much. But it's just, I guess that's almost more interesting though sometimes than having a game of the year that it's just, that's it. It's like, it's almost more interesting sometimes to be agonizing over it until the 11th hour.
Yeah, I really liked what I played of it. So I definitely, as I touched on in our category discussion, I need to go back and play more of it because that easily could have been in my top 5. I just haven't played enough to say that's the case. So
yeah,
Yep. So hopefully we'll revisit that, or I'll revisit that someday soon. So
yep.
All right. My number 2 is the one that might be a little bit contentious simply because it's a game that didn't originally come out this year, but it did hit the Switch this year, and that is Stardew Valley. I already touched on, it already won my best indie game of the year in our previous discussion. But I'm having a blast with this game. It harkens back to Harvest Moon, but builds upon it, adds new layers, and really just makes it a grander experience. And yeah, I'm having a ball with it. I've already put 75 hours into it across the few weeks I've been able to actively play it. And it's just a great time. Like, I'm gonna sit down probably after this discussion and go play some more. So yeah, like, it's a game that it does almost everything I want it to and more. And I'm having it's just a really fun time. Like, it captures the spirit of Harvest Moon, which is a game I also adored back in the day. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I already talked about this a lot in the past one. But it captures that spirit and does more with it.
I'll ask this for a new aspect of it. How much of a guide game is it? Because when I first started, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much here, and there's so many different ways to go, and so many things to do. Where do I start? That's
a guide game?
Yeah, a guide. So, like, how much of a guide do you need in order to sort of understand what you need to do? Or are we able to just sort of ease into it and just...
Yeah, I think that's kind of a lot of the charm. Like, actually, kind of like Breath of the Wild. I think a lot of the fun is in the discovery of, like, what works, what doesn't. I'll straight up admit, there have been a couple times where I looked up something, but I've actively been avoiding, like, using guides. Like, especially in my first year. And I really am still barely doing it now. I think a lot of the fun is just, like, figuring out what works for yourself and how you want to lay out your farm. Like, there have been times where I looked up a question just so I understood, like, how some of the mechanics worked. And people would post, like, full layouts of their farms. Like, oh man, I don't want to see that. Like, keep that away from me. I want my farm to develop by itself. I don't want to, like, be informed by what other people are doing and go for the most optimized route. I want to discover, like, what works for me as I go through it. And part of the fun for me is the reward system as you go through the game, where you get these, like, kind of incremental rewards, where you get, like, a watering can that helps you water a little bit faster. And it sounds stupid, but it really is rewarding because that buys you time, and time is kind of, like, important because you can do more each day. And so yeah, I like that. Like, I just love these, like, incremental rewards that when you talk about it sounds really dumb, but are really fun within the context of what Stardew Valley is.
I've heard amazing things. It's one of those things I wouldn't mind checking out, but
yeah, I mean, I actually have a friend who also loves it. He just got a Switch and got Stardew Valley, and he adores it. But he's like, Ash, you'd hate it, and that's funny. That's what's funny is that, like, I've heard how incredible it is, and I obviously know you love it, Andre. But I have traditionally never been able to get into sim-like games like Harvest Moon or what have you, Animal Crossing even. I don't play Animal Crossing games for that long. Compared to a lot of fans. And like Harvest Moon, I never could get into it. So as much as I've heard it's an incredible game, I don't know if it would resonate with me. I want to try it, but at the same time, I'm a little afraid to, because if it does somehow resonate, then that's another game I don't have time to play. But I don't know if it would resonate with me in the same way, as much as I've heard that it's incredible.
If my dad ever got a Switch, I'd have to get the game for him, because he loved Harvest Moon back in nature on PS1.
Oh yeah, he probably would love this. I've thought about trying to get my parents, like, seeing they would be interested, but I wonder if it might be too much for them, even though my dad can't handle Resident Evil 4 and Zelda Breath of the Wild. Both of those required a lot of work. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I think the core gameplay might appeal to my mom, but I'm not sure if she could actually, spend enough time with it to get used to the controls, because she's not great with games in general. Yeah,
I understand.
All right, Derek, you're number 2 or number 1.
Number 1, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're final round. Yeah,
final round. We kind of merged mine and yours together, since your number 3 was my number 2.
Well, that's a funny thing. Like, we're at the point now where we all know what everyone's number 1 is.
Oh yeah, exactly. If you don't know what our number 1s are, I mean, the thing is,
you literally said what it was in your game
I
your review
declared
of it.
mine in my review. It is Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because it was weird going into this. I was before Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to pick for my game of the year. I loved Zelda. I loved Odyssey. I still really like Resident Evil 7. There's so many other great games. And then I sat down and started playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I know not everybody's gotten into this game. I've seen people play it and it's just like, it's just not for me. And I completely get it. But for me, diving into this world, seeing the mechanics of it, seeing how it evolves and goes, and again, that, as Ash likes to mention for SteamWorld Dig 2, that dynamic of getting something in order to get this thing and then moving on to this. I love that when they have that nice rotation of it, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 pulls that off. There is always some reward for doing something. They reward you for shopping. If you buy one item of everything in the shop, you actually own that shop and get a passive skill. That is brilliant, when the original Xenoblade had almost no reason to shop. There are so many improvements to this game that make it just to me, a better version of Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I think the deciding factor for a lot of people is going to be which one they like more, is honestly going to come down to the story. And as I said with my best narrative in our other discussion, yeah, I love the story for this game. The twists and turns it takes, all the things that happens, the choreography of the fight scenes, the revelations, the character development, it's all top notch and just hooked me. Like, I did not expect to beat this game before the review. I got so pulled in that I had to do it. Like, I delayed working on the review just so I could finish this game and see how the hell it ends. And it is so rewarding and left me just with a pure sense of accomplishment and feeling good about actually doing it and seeing how it all wrapped up and getting a denouement for many of these characters and some really emotional moments for a lot of them, and just shocking surprises where I'd go, holy crap, or oh my god, and geeking out with a meal in it. It was so good. It was so fun. It just made for one of the best the best experience I had this year, and definitely my favorite game of 2017.
Man, I want to play it so much. I mean, that's just yet another game where it's like another 100 hours. But, I mean, hearing you talk about it, thinking of my own memories about how much I love the original Xenoblade Chronicles and JRPGs in general, and I didn't really get to play, now that I think about it, I didn't get to really play any JRPGs this year, which is a real shame. And, I mean, Xenoblade 2 would be one of the first ones I would turn to. I mean, God, everything you're saying about it sounds like it's right up my alley. Obviously, I didn't have the best first impression of it because I did our previews for it, and I don't think the demos of it, the way they dropped you into the game with no prior, knowledge of what's going on and all the different layers in the battle system, it wasn't the greatest first impression for me. But hearing you talk about how, no, when you start from the beginning, how the game really does do a good job of introducing every layer of battle to you and making sure you understand everything, and that it is a much better experience when you're playing from the beginning, that just makes me want to go out and play it right now. I wish I could. It looks so good. The soundtrack sounds amazing. It's got several of my favorite musicians on it. And, I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 told a great story, so I have no doubt that 2 can do the same. And if I could have played it, I might be talking about it too right now. But it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I probably said this before, but if you have any questions about how good the music can be, look up More Ordained.
Nice.
It is
I will
so
do that.
good.
I have nothing to say about it. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
number one.
I mean, I will say this. You weren't bored watching me play with Nintendo Treehouse. Not completely.
Sure.
Well, you
Wow.
you lied to me, Andre.
No, I'm glad you love it like that game. I mean, I'm just not into those type of games, really.
No, I
so.
completely understand. It is not for everyone. I completely
Yeah, I see
admit
that battle system, and I'm like, there's no way I can see that being worth the investment for me to understand what any of these 200 meters mean or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely get it. If this is not your type of game, it will do nothing for you. Yeah. But if this is your type of game, it is one of the best.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
All right, Ash, what's your number one? Well, we know it, but...
But I'm going to open up by saying if there is ever proof that video game criticism or ranking or anything is not a linear thing, then my number one is it. And I am as surprised as anybody that my number one game of the year is Zelda Breath of the Wild. And
Isn't that surprising?
Yeah, you're just
surprised
following
because-
trends. You're just going after the Game Awards. You're not being original. Jeez,
I know,
Ash.
right? And that's what it. I know it could be seen that way, but there's so many things I could say about this. But yeah, I mean, I was making a little list of the things about Breath of the Wild I don't like, and we've talked about these things. I think the story is massively wasted potential. The characters are cool, but you only get to see these characters in the context of 100 years ago. You don't get to spend time with them, and they're cool characters, but it sucks. The dungeons. I don't like the dungeons or the divine beasts. I don't really like how they all feel samey, and as you've said, Andre, the inventory system is a mess. Like, there's so many reasons I could talk about were things I didn't like about Breath of the Wild, but, when I did some soul searching and really kept thinking about it, I thought about all the experiences I had playing games this year, and the vast majority of the memories I had of doing cool things and discovering things and having my own story, it was Breath of the Wild. And I'm so shocked because I don't like open world games. I also don't like games that don't have a story. And Breath of the Wild ticks both of those boxes. It's an open world game without a strong narrative, but moment for moment, I can't replace the feeling of so many feelings of discovery I had throughout the 140 hours that I initially spent with that game, and then I came back for the DLC. I mean, even just going, sailing off the plateau for the first time, but just, I can think of so many times that I discovered something, and the way that I did it or the way that I accomplished something was uniquely my story. And I've said this before, but for as many people, players as there are who have played Breath of the Wild, there are that many different stories of how people experienced that game. And I think that's something that's a little easy to take for granted 9 months after the fact, where we're thinking, in the context of all these other incredible games. And I mean, that's true, but Breath of the Wild has done so many things that other games have not, and it's not necessarily the best take on open world ever. It's not even my favorite Zelda game. Like, it's probably it barely makes my top 5 Zelda games, but just, God, that sense of exploration, and the fact that Breath of the Wild, for a little while there, did bring back that sense of pre-internet gaming, where people really were discovering things for the first time, and it actually took a while for that game to be completely cracked open. And I think you guys said it best when you said that Breath of the Wild is a stepping stone in a lot of ways. I want to see the next 3D Zelda take the best parts of Breath of the Wild while excising all the worst parts. I want to see Breath of the Wild's gameplay with a great story, with characters I actually get to spend time around and care about. But as you said it, Andre, earlier, that Horizon and Breath of the Wild are funny and that they cover each other's weaknesses, and that's completely true. Horizon has my favorite story this year. I love Aloy, but at the end of the day, I had to remind myself we're playing video games, and as a video game, just the way Breath of the Wild's world just works, the physics and just exploring, and just the way you feel connected into that world in a visceral way that I never have other open world games. Even if it didn't have my favorite individual components in every case, taken as a whole, I don't think there's any other game that I've thought about or had crazier stories about this year than Breath of the Wild, which is why, even if it isn't an obvious, immediate pick for me, at the end of the day, that's what I came down to for my number 1.
So Aloy and Link need to have a baby, is what you're saying.
Basically, exactly. That is. You can distill. That is a TLDR version of everything I just said.
That is actually an OTP.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Zelda just really does reward creativity in every way. Want to try it out? Give it a shot. See if it works.
And part of what I was saying before was again, what makes this a little lopsided is I was able to get back and play all of the Zelda DLC before we did this discussion, but I haven't been able to even look at the Frozen Wilds. So again, if I had gotten to play that, maybe we'd be having a different discussion, maybe not. But that's how difficult it was to come to this decision, because I love and just respect both games for what they've done well so much. But Breath of the Wild just has done things that I've never seen before, and did them many times. And I have to give it my top honors for that.
Yeah,
makes sense.
That's awesome. I mean, you're definitely not alone in that opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm a shill.
Yep.
I mean, ultimately, it's probably a good thing one of us on one of the bigger
true.
Nintendo focused channels gave it the number 1. So
that's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
So it worked out. So all right, no, I mean, Zelda's a great game.
I mean, technically, you could say it's our top 3 games.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's true.
Good point.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked out of all 3 of us that I was the one who came to it being number 1. But at the same time, I'm also not, because you had Mario, Andre, and Derek, you had Xenoblade.
Well, way to spoil Andre's number 1.
Way to
I had
ruin it,
no
Ash.
idea what Andre's
Good old Ash. Ash Paulson over here. Ash Spoiler Paulson over here.
Jeez.
All right, well, yeah. So in case somebody didn't guess, my number 1 is obviously Super Mario Odyssey, which is somehow probably even more obvious than Derek outright stating it in his review of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because I literally gave it a review score we'd never used before, being mind-blowing.
Oh, I don't feel as bad now, because it's true. You did give it a mind-blowing score.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I mean, people. I think for the most part, people already knew what our number 1s were this year.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Mario Odyssey for me hit buttons that have not been pressed in years for me, maybe even decades. It is a game that I so thoroughly enjoyed almost all the way through. I mean, it's not perfect. I had complaints. I say them in my review, but it's a game that it's something you hear sometimes, and I don't know how true it is for people to actually say it, but for me, I almost had a smile on my face the entire time through this game. It reached a part of my brain, there's a sheer joy portion where I was just having a ball the entire way through. Yeah, I may not have the exact same sense of discovery Zelda had, but I was just having a blast through these meticulously designed courses that I thought were so perfectly engineered. New Donk City for me is just a playground of things to do. I was literally for hours not doing anything of note, and I was having a great time. So just bouncing around, and it's funny because that level itself really isn't that big, and yet it feels humongous.
It also has no enemies.
You can go about it. Yeah, it has no enemies.
That's true.
So Mario level has no enemies, and it's a freaking ball. So, I mean, for me, I said before, Mario 64 was my favorite Mario game, probably. And this one is a return to form for it. It's a style of gameplay from Mario we have not seen since that game. And it recaptured it, so to speak, almost perfectly, and adds like layers on new mechanics with the capturing mechanic that were so fun and mixed it up on a moment-to-moment level and was fun almost the entire way through. So yeah, it was constantly diversifying itself and while maintaining a level of quality almost the entire way through for me. Like, it was just a fun, super fun experience that it may not be as important as Breath of the Wild in the grand scheme of things. That's why I said that was the most important game of the year for me. But it's one that I had the most fun with. And it resonated with me in ways that no game has really since, probably since Galaxy, I would say. But, you know, on some specific levels since Mario 64. But yeah, it brought me to tears at a couple points. I'm like, man, I'm having so much fun. It's overwhelming me.
Totally.
Like, can I handle this?
Like I said before, I was getting worried because I wasn't crying at the moment you guys were. I felt like really like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I didn't get that emotional until the very end. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. But you're right. I mean, it cannot be understated how much Cappy makes Odyssey. And all the different gameplay styles you get that are still stick to the core of a Mario game. Like, they're not that wild. They still stick to those ideas. And there's so many different abilities.
What's really cool is these levels are obviously, you know, as it harkens back to Mario 64, these levels are much more open than most Mario games. But then you also have these capture abilities, as you mentioned, which further opens up even more. I don't know how that works. You take an open box and they're opening up even more. It's like they're smashing the box down. It's like here's even more you can do now than you couldn't do before, and it's fun.
Well, and in much the same way, it just, the game continuously rewards creativity. I mean, the way that Mario's moves have been designed in Odyssey, and it's very specific, the way that you can do a forward dive in midair and then throw your cap again, and then bounce off the cap, and then do all sorts of other midair acrobatics that you don't need to do to beat the game, or even anywhere close. But for speedrunners or for people who just like to do things more efficiently, I mean, every world, like you said, I think, Andre, is that every world's like a playground, essentially, and Mario has all the moves he needs to have fun in that playground, for players to have fun. And I just love I love how they're, much like Breath of the Wild again, there is almost never, maybe never, one way to get anywhere or do something in Odyssey. There are, you know, if you can dream it up and if you can think of some crazy acrobatic way to get up to a platform, chances are, if you can pull it off mechanically, the game will let you do it. And I love that about Odyssey. And it just, again, it constantly rewards player expectation and especially creativity. And that's not something that you get from a lot of games these days. And I love Mario Odyssey. It's such a fantastic game.
What's really cool is touching on that, Ash, how you can do things any number of ways. You know, kind of like a smaller scale of Breath of the Wild. What is really cool is how they even built that into the game. I mean, obviously they built it into the game on purpose, but they even planned for some specific moments of that where you can reach an area you wouldn't think you can normally reach. Like in any other game, you would have like gone outside the normal boundaries, and yet here I'll like pop up a message from Cappy or something, be like, "Hey, congrats," or like, "I can't believe you made it," or like there'll be like coins there or something. Like in areas you would never expect to be able to reach, but if you pull it off, there's something there. It's like, oh, the developer's planning for this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, there were so many times where, you're exactly right. Like, I would make myself get up to certain platforms that you wouldn't need to get up to anyway, but just to see if the developers expected me to get there somehow, and 99.9% of the time, they did. And that was awesome to see that. Like, oh, you got up to this, random up platform that you never even need to go on? Sure, have some coins. Like, and that's the other thing, coins. I think Mario Odyssey has probably the best economy of any, mainline Mario game.
It has an economy.
Yeah.
It has, in the sense
it's
that it does.
It's not just tossing coins at you like New Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yeah. And everything is, or there are things that are expensive enough that even if you're going for 100%, you're still going to be actively searching out coins and trying to gather coins as you play through the post game. So I do love that Odyssey added another point to coins, and that you actually want to collect them because there's a shop to spend them on.
Yeah, Mario Odyssey makes a lot of smart improvements or changes to the Mario series. Like, there's the coins have purpose now. There's no longer a life counter. You can die as many times as you want with minimal punishment.
Yeah.
These are great ideas, and it does kind of like in some ways reinvent Mario a little bit. Along the lines of Breath of the Wild, not nearly to the same degree, and also Mario wasn't nearly in as much need of it as as Zelda was.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit weird comparing those two games because, like again, that's why I said Breath of the Wild is the most important game of the year. Zelda needed it. Mario didn't need it, but I'm glad they made the game that they did. and because it's just a fantastic game, even if it itself is in some ways a return. Well, like how Breath of the Wild is kind of a return to the style of the original Zelda gameplay. Mario is similar, except it doesn't go quite as far back. It goes back to Mario 64, but builds on that. So it's really interesting how there are these comparisons you can make between the two games, even if they are very different. Yeah, I mean, again, to kind of wrap this whole thing up here, this year in general was insane, and for Nintendo in particular, considering they made 2 of the top games of the year, which is nuts. Like, that is crazy. So.
I mean, really, you just summed it up right there, Andre.
Pretty much.
Like, it really has been an incredible year for games, no matter what you like, no matter what you want to play. And especially, I mean, you've got to give Nintendo a special shout-out here, only because they are coming back from one of their worst years in history, and the worst system that they've ever had in terms of sell-through. So, I mean, they're coming back from... Well, except for Virtual Boy, of course. but you know.
Yeah. But I mean, they've almost sold as many Switches in a year as what Wii U did in its lifetime. That's some healthy growth.
Yeah, and in the you know, in the middle of all that, managed to release 2 groundbreaking games that are, you know, could be argued to be the best in their respective series, even if I don't think necessarily we all feel that same way in both cases. I know, Andre, you probably think that about Odyssey, potentially, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I'd have to really sit down and think about that, but yeah. For sure.
But it's like, it's just been an incredible year, and we have to wrap this up because right now I'm thinking about all the incredible nail-biting, exhilarating fights I had with machines in Horizon, and I'm starting to doubt myself again, and I'm going to keep myself up, so we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's really funny to compare our Game of the Year this year to last year's, where, for instance, Star Fox Zero made my top 3, I think. So.
I'm trying. It's been a while, so I have such a bad memory. I'm trying to remember my last year's Game of the Year, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about another game that made your top 3, Andre, last year.
Which one?
Super Mario Run.
Oh, yeah.
I'm never going to let you live that down.
I like that game, all right?
No, I know you did. I know.
But no, I mean, I agree. Like, I mean, it probably shouldn't. I mean,
The
I
fact
wish
that
it
a cell
hadn't.
phone game is
I wish there were. I wish there
Yeah.
were games that superseded it from Nintendo at least. Yeah, so I am glad that 2017 was a much better year for Nintendo. And speaking of which, make sure to stay tuned because very soon we will have our wrap-up of 2017. We'll have a wrap-up of the whole year of 2017 for Nintendo, in which we'll dive much deeper in depth as to how great of a year this was, as well as touch on what maybe they could do better in 2018. And yeah, we'll have a few discussions related to all that. So on that note, I think we're about done here, so thanks for watching. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for lots more on Nintendo in general, and everything else Nintendo as well, because that wasn't redundant enough. Thanks for watching, and of course, stay tuned for more. Yeah, I'm out, man. We've been talking for too long, Jesus.
Right?
I'm done. Bye.